Lady, gentlemen, you are welcome to the Progressive Mind Show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here, son. Good to see you again.
It's a little bit of a shaky start, but thanks for bearing with us, my wonderful guest. We'll start with the guys from the Abolition Institute. Please give us a little background for folks who do not know what the Abolition Institute is, and then we can go into your journey or your project at Mauritania, and then we'll come to the main reason why we're here today.
Abolition Institute was founded in 2012 by Chicago native Sean Tenner and Mauritanian native by way of New York now. However, the slavery struck a chord here with those of us in America because it mirrors in many ways the same slavery that we studied about and learned about of our ancestors here in America, in that it is race-based. It is a misconstruction of sacred text used to manipulate and continue to enforce this horrific humane crisis. And we at Abolition Institute were formed in honor of the President of the United States, who was responsible for the Emancipation Proclamation, President Lincoln. We live in the land of Lincoln, and so it made sense that Abolition Institute be formed here in Illinois. Unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, we happen to be the only abolitionist organization focused on eradicating slavery in Mauritania.
Wonderful. That's a very comprehensive background, even though you put in a few words in a short time. That gives people, that gives me a better understanding of what the Abolition Institute is and how far you've come. I also know that you have been to Mauritania 2 times. The first one was in 2017, right? That was 2017. No, 2016.
2017 is when the tour was constructed for us to go.
Okay.
Our founder has been to Mauritania 3-4 times.
Right. Okay. Because okay. But tell us your experience was the last time you attempted. In addition to the last time you attempted to go to Mauritania, you had what's his name? Anthony. No, not Anthony.
Reverend Mitchell Johnson.
No.
Reverend Jackson's son, Jonathan Johnson.
Jonathan Johnson. Yeah. He was with you then. Can you please give us a brief explanation as to what the experience was when you attempted to go to Mauritania to try and deal with the slavery issue, please?
Sure. So what the Abolition Institute does is we try to support those that are working on the ground, Mauritanians themselves, who are fighting for the abolition of slavery and for human rights and for democracy. In doing that, we work with it's an organization called ERA, which stands for the Resurgence of the Abolitionist Movement in Mauritania. That is the main group amongst many in Mauritania that fights to abolish slavery in Mauritania. They also work with other organizations like Anti-Slavery International, the oldest abolition group in the world. So we work with groups like that to support those in Mauritania who are trying to fight for their freedom. In doing that, we gathered a very auspicious group, including Jonathan Jackson, national spokesman for the Rainbow Push Coalition, Minister Lawrence here on behalf of the Trinity United Church of Christ, myself on behalf of Masjid Al Taqwa, a very active community mosque here in Chicago. Obviously, Sean and Bakari Tanja, who were founders of the Abolition Institute, went with us, and a number of scholars, judges, and activists and religious leaders that went with us. And the point of that journey was it was a fact-finding mission. What we wanted to do was to talk to people on the ground, both people in the government, as well as people in civil society, and people who had experienced slavery or were experiencing the institution of slavery there themselves, so that we could understand what the institution was, how it worked, and how we could best help to all of those in the country who had expressed a commitment to trying to end slavery and the vestiges of slavery. And what we found was that we arrived on the airplane and were advised that the government had decided to bar our entry and were not going to allow us to enter the country. We were detained in the airport for almost a day. Not allowed to leave. They took our passports from us and put us in a room. The U.S. ambassador at the time to Mauritania intervened on our behalf to make sure that we were protected. We were eventually put back on a plane and escorted out of the country. We wound up across the border in Dakar, Senegal, where we met a number of the activists, including Biram Da Abed, who was the founder of IRA, and we actually met individuals who had, with the help of IRA and other organizations, had escaped from slavery and got to hear their personal stories of what that institution means to real people, and activists who had been the victims of fairly brutal government repression, including imprisonment and torture, and beatings in the street. So we got to really understand the institution of slavery in Mauritania and how it works. We also got an understanding of how that institution in a country like that feeds the broader issue of global human trafficking. There was a problem of especially women who were being sent from Mauritania to work in other countries like Saudi Arabia as slaves and indentured servants, who were exploited both in the institution of slavery in their own country and were exported to other countries to be exploited. So it's a very serious issue. We learned a lot in our trip, notwithstanding the fact that the government had decided to bar us from the country.
And one point I'd like to bring out is the amazing gift of the country making that really despondent choice not to let us in.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did they gift us with tremendous media coverage that we could not have paid for on our own, on an international level, but they also thwarted their own capabilities by disallowing us entry, in that our agenda continued forward. Even the day that we lost in the rerouting of travel, our U.S. ambassador was able to conduct the meetings that were on the itinerary for that day and placed empty chairs with our shirts on those chairs to signify our presence even in our absence. And then for those who are unfamiliar with the geographic layout of West Africa, I want you to understand that although we were forced to come and stay in Dakar, it would be symbolically equal to staying in Milwaukee because you can't come in Chicago. That is geographically what happened. And so while we were in Dakar, our itinerary continued verbatim as it had been planned. And the only alterations met with greater opportunity for us to continue the work we had begun and continue the operations and opportunities that we sought. Meeting with slaves who had just been released and learning their stories firsthand truly sent reverberating power back amongst the women who were a part of that tour, because we came home and we wrote a powerful expose, which anyone can get if they reach out to South Shore Current magazine, where they will see the expose we wrote about this issue, how slavery in Mauritania is very much a maternal issue. Women are considered the highest value. If they had 10 boys and 1 girl, the slave owner would prefer the 1 girl because they can force them to reproduce and reproduce and reproduce. Boys, you use them, that's it. So it is very much important to recognize those facts.
I'd like to take. Go ahead.
Oh, so I just wanted to say that while we were there, again, we had the fortune of meeting a lot of really wonderful people, really brave people who were willing to stand up and literally risk their lives in their fight for freedom and the dignity of their people. And amongst the people that we met were a number of brave young men in a musical group called Ulad Lavlad, who sing and make songs. They're very popular hip hop artists in Mauritania and in the region. And they sing about these issues of human bondage and freedom, slavery, and repressive governments, and are considered by the Mauritanian government enemies of the state, really, because they criticize the government's role in perpetuating the system of slavery, a system which a number of U.S. senators, as a matter of fact, have recognized in a letter to the International Monetary Fund. These are Republican senators, as a matter of fact, who criticized the International Monetary Fund's plans to provide loans to Mauritania because of its abysmal human rights record. So we're here today. One of the things we want to talk to you today about is that we are trying to, the Abolition Institute is trying to bring that brave group of musicians, hip hop musicians, Ulad Lavlad, to the United States, to Chicago, to perform at the African Festival of the Arts, which you know is one of the oldest and largest African diaspora festivals in the country, to bring not only their talent, it'd be the first time that the festivals had a band from Mauritania, but also to bring their message of freedom and to educate the people of Chicago, especially the people of the African diaspora here in Chicago, about the issues in Mauritania and the issues of human trafficking in the region.
It's fair because
we have their song, so we'll play it later in the show.
Okay,
I found it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's fair because the issues concerning the African continent somewhat has to be dealt with by Africans, I believe. And when we get external help, that's good. And so I was just interested in, I was just curious in trying to find out why you, as Americans, what first of all drew you to this project, to this slavery issue in Mauritania. What's the passion behind you doing this? Because obviously you're not from Africa, and so what drives you to
Not their record.
Well, yeah. So briefly, I just wanted to retract a little bit so people can understand why you're doing this, and then we can go to Ulad Lavlad. Did I get it right? Ulad Lavlad.
Let Lynda take that.
I think this is a very easy answer. We're in the 21st century, and modern day slavery is going on right now. Who but those of us who are in the African American community cannot deny the disdain, the disparaging anger that fuels from knowing that this is going on. But what fueled us even more was understanding the underlying mirror images of the form and the way that this slavery is continued and allowed to continue. There are laws on the books, sure, but they're not being enforced. There have been many efforts made to bring the government to reconcile itself and to justify changing its behaviors, none of which have succeeded.
Okay.
We're a
You mean
power
efforts being
nation.
made by the locals or the international body?
The locals.
Okay.
The locals. And our organization, Abolition Institute, recognized of all times that this is a tremendously important moment.
Okay.
And we now stand at the epicenter as a organization. We are recognized.
Since you started working on this project, first of all, let me ask: are you trying to galvanize or at least create awareness to the international body so you can get more support?
Absolutely,
And
that's what I was just about to tell
Okay.
you. On an international human rights level, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, United Nations Human Rights, they all look at what Abolition Institute is saying and doing in response to this issue now. We are recognized in those organizations. Our statement to stand against the most recent tragedy, which is the government in incarcerating one of the leading abolitionists on the ground, who's been recognized in the United States and across the world for his work, Biram Dadid, was arrested the day before the electoral documents needed to be submitted for approval for the upcoming elections. Effort meant nothing. His documents have been approved. The people on his slate have been accepted. But the point is, we have international people watching us now. And not just those human rights organizations, but even the Mauritanians who are on the ground are watching Chicago, watching Abolition Institute, watching what we're doing and being empowered to continue to stay the course because they know international support is consistent and continuing.
And you feel like you're getting, you feel like the African international organization, I mean, the African Unity, African Union, the African Union, do you think that you're getting the same level of support you're getting from the international, which is UN and other international bodies?
I think that we probably could use much more support from the African Union.
As it is now, you're not getting that oomph that you would expect.
We're getting support from, believe it or not, the U.S. State Department, who recognized Biram Dadid and gave him an award for his work. The United Nations recognized him and gave him an award for his work. The U.S. State Department, with the help of people like Senator Durbin and Senator Corker, who worked with us to promote this, provided funding for Mauritania, Mali, and Senegal to fight human trafficking and slavery. So we've got support from the United States government, 2 different appropriations, and that money went straight to organizations like ERA and
SOS Esclaves.
And SOS Esclaves in country to provide assistance to those that were escaping slavery, and also to help fund their efforts to both end slavery or through legal action, and also to actually physically help people escape slavery. The connection as both an African American and a Muslim, I think the connections, if you will, that feed the interest in this issue are probably fairly self-evident. The history of African Americans here and the kind of chattel slavery that we lived through is reflected in the kind of hereditary chattel slavery that you see in Mauritania. And obviously it's a Muslim country, so as a Muslim as well, I think me and members of Masjid Taqwa and other Muslims that are involved in this effort also feel a certain personal obligation to try and eradicate this practice that goes against both human rights and also the tenets of the religion of Islam as well.
So I love the project, and one of the efforts in trying to get to your goal and achieve your purpose is to bring these young artists, young rappers from the land of Mauritania to come to Chicago. First of all, of course, to expose the talent to, because hip hop, we know hip hop emanates from here. When I was watching their video, it dawned on me the effect of the hip hop culture on the entire African continent, actually the entire world. If you go to Asia, you see kids, trying to rap and try to, do the gestures like, you see
Absolutely.
here, and it's all over Africa, even in Europe. So I think we don't talk about it that much. We don't lay a lot of emphasis on the impact the pop culture or the hip hop culture or the African American culture has on other ethnic groups outside the United States of America. And maybe in the days to come, we probably will lay a lot of emphasis on it, which goes to tell me that if African Americans start taking advantage of the resources back home, start looking back home, especially the continent of Africa, I think that it would benefit the African American community a lot, because the influence is already there positively. And so this is just a sidetrack
No, this is an important point. I mean, one of the things I think, and Lynda can vouch for this, one of the things we found is that when they get the support and attention from people in the United States, especially members of the African diaspora and African Americans, it is such an inspiration to the people in Mauritania that are fighting. And to the extent that your listeners can help us with donations at stoppingslavery.org, to help us bring this group of musicians into the United States. It helps to further communicate that their brothers and sisters across the ocean are behind them,
Yes.
and are willing to actively support their efforts for freedom.